The giant space station hung in the dark void like a crystal palace made of light and metal. Ambassador HFY walked through the gleaming corridors with his 4 eyes focused on the emergency alert flashing on his communication device. The Galactic Council had not called an emergency session in over 200 years. Something was very wrong. The council chamber filled quickly with representatives from dozens of star systems. HFY took his seat among the other ambassadors and watched as the large display screen showed a single ship approaching their space. The vessel looked strange and primitive compared to the sleek designs they were used to seeing. It had sharp angles and what appeared to be crude metal plating covering most of its surface. High Arbitrator Kelthus stood at the center of the chamber and activated the viewing screen. The unknown ship grew larger as their sensors focused on it. Every ambassador in the room studied the vessel with growing confusion. The ship looked like something from their ancient history books, back when their ancestors still used basic metals and simple construction methods. "This vessel appeared at the edge of our space 3 hours ago," Kelthus announced to the chamber. "Our deep space sensors detected it moving at sublight speeds using what appears to be chemical propulsion. The design matches no known civilization in our database." HFY leaned forward in his seat. The ship was covered in what looked like weapons, but they were unlike anything he had ever seen. Instead of the elegant energy projectors used by civilized species, this vessel had crude metal tubes pointing in multiple directions. The entire design suggested a species that expected constant warfare. On the bridge of the UNS Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison stood behind his command chair and watched the alien space station grow larger on the main screen. The structure was beautiful in a way that human engineering had never achieved. It looked more like a work of art than a military installation. Jake had been in space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Communications Officer Pete Young from his station. "The computer is trying to translate it, but the language is completely unknown." Navigator Lisa Parker looked up from her console. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from that station. Their technology is definitely more advanced than ours." Jake nodded and walked to the communications station. The universal translator was working hard to make sense of the alien language. After several minutes, words began to appear on the screen. The message was formal and direct. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Galactic Council space without permission. State your species, origin, and intentions immediately. Failure to comply will result in the deployment of defensive measures." Jake studied the message for a moment. The tone was polite but firm. These aliens clearly had experience with first contact situations. He turned to his crew and saw the mix of excitement and nervousness on their faces. This was the moment that every human had dreamed about for centuries. "Pete, open a channel," Jake ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves to the galaxy." Back on the space station, the council chamber fell silent as the alien response came through their speakers. The voice was speaking a completely unknown language, but their translation systems worked quickly to convert the words. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Nations Space Command vessel Liberty. We are humans from the planet Earth. We come in peace and seek to establish diplomatic contact with your civilization." Ambassador HFY exchanged glances with the other council members. The aliens called themselves humans and claimed to come in peace. This was the standard first contact protocol that most species followed. What troubled him was the primitive appearance of their vessel and the crude weapons it carried. "The vessel shows no signs of advanced shielding technology," reported the station's defense coordinator. "Their hull appears to be simple metal alloy with no energy barriers. However, they are carrying what looks like kinetic projectile weapons of an unknown design." High Arbitrator Kelthus studied the data with concern. Most civilized species had abandoned kinetic weapons thousands of years ago in favor of more precise energy-based systems. The fact that these humans still used such primitive armaments suggested they were either very young as a species or very aggressive by nature. "Send the standard first contact package," Kelthus ordered. "Include our peaceful intentions and a basic overview of Galactic Council protocols. However, maintain defensive readiness. Any species that still relies on kinetic weapons may not understand civilized diplomatic procedures. On the Liberty, Jake received the alien data package and called his senior staff to the briefing room. Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan, Weapons Officer Ryan Bell, and Cultural Analyst Helen Barnes gathered around the table as Pete displayed the translated information on the main screen. The data was overwhelming. The Galactic Council represented over 300 different species across dozens of star systems. They had maintained peace for over 3,000 years through advanced technology and diplomatic cooperation. Most conflicts were resolved through economic sanctions or technological restrictions rather than military force. "Captain, look at this," Helen said, pointing to a section about galactic military protocols. "They haven't had a major war in centuries. Their entire defense strategy is based on energy shields and non-lethal disabling weapons." Kate looked up from her engineering analysis. "Sir, their technology is definitely more advanced than ours, but it's focused on very different applications. They seem to assume that any hostile force would use energy-based weapons." Jake considered this information carefully. Humanity had developed in a very different environment. Earth had seen constant warfare throughout its history, and human technology reflected that reality. Every human ship was built to survive in combat, and every system had multiple backups in case of damage or sabotage. The cultural differences were becoming clear. These aliens had achieved peace through advanced technology and cooperation. Humans had achieved survival through constant preparation for conflict. Now these two very different philosophies were about to meet in the vast darkness of space. High Arbitrator Kelthus studied the human vessel through the station's advanced sensors and felt a growing sense of unease. The ship called Liberty moved through space with the confidence of a predator, its hull bristling with weapons that belonged in a museum. The humans had responded to the Galactic Council's peaceful overtures with polite words, but their actions told a different story. "They launched a probe without permission," reported Defense Coordinator Melkar from his station. "The device is scanning our station and collecting detailed information about our defensive capabilities." The council chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Ambassador Zexhai felt his stomach twist with concern. In 3,000 years of peaceful contact, no species had ever conducted unauthorized scans of council facilities during first contact procedures. The humans were either completely ignorant of diplomatic protocol or they were preparing for aggressive action. Commander Velnash of the Council Defense Fleet received the emergency alert while his ships patrolled the outer system. His 3 vessels represented the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Each ship was equipped with quantum disruptors that could disable any known weapon system and plasma shields that could deflect any energy attack. "All ships, move to intercept the unknown vessel," Velnash ordered through the communication system. "Maintain peaceful posture but prepare defensive systems. These humans may not understand the consequences of their aggressive behavior." On the Liberty, Captain Jake watched the approaching alien ships with interest rather than concern. The vessels were beautiful examples of advanced engineering, with smooth curves and no visible weapons. They moved through space like dancers, their energy signatures showing sophisticated propulsion systems that humanity could barely understand. "3 ships approaching from different vectors," reported navigator Lisa Parker. "They're taking up positions that would allow them to surround us if necessary." Weapons Officer Ryan Bell looked up from his console with a puzzled expression. "Captain, I'm not detecting any obvious weapons on those ships. They have some kind of energy projectors, but the power levels seem too low for serious combat applications." Jake nodded and turned to Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan. "What's your assessment of their technology?" Kate studied her readings carefully before responding. "Sir, their ships are definitely more advanced than ours, but they're built for a completely different purpose. Everything I'm seeing suggests they're designed to disable rather than destroy. Their energy systems appear focused on disrupting electronics and overloading power grids." Cultural analyst Helen Barnes reviewed the diplomatic data they had received from the aliens. Captain, according to their protocols, we should have requested permission before launching our probe. They probably see our actions as hostile. Jake considered the situation. From a human military perspective, gathering intelligence about potential threats was basic common sense. Every human captain would have done the same thing in unknown territory. But these aliens clearly operated under different assumptions about how civilized species should behave. Commander Velnash positioned his fleet in a standard containment formation around the human vessel. The Liberty was now surrounded by 3 council ships, each one capable of disabling it with a single quantum pulse. He opened a communication channel and delivered the traditional warning. Human vessel, you have violated Galactic Council space protocols by conducting unauthorized scans of our facilities. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted to a holding area pending diplomatic resolution. On the Liberty's bridge, the alien message appeared on the main screen in translated text. Jake read it twice before responding. The tone was more demanding than the previous communications, and the mention of weapons suggested the aliens were becoming nervous about human intentions. Pete, open a channel, Jake ordered. Commander Velnash, this is Captain Morrison. We launched a standard reconnaissance probe to gather information about your technology and defensive capabilities. This is normal procedure for first contact. Situations in human space. We meant no offense. The response from the alien commander came back quickly. Captain Morrison, the unauthorized collection of military intelligence is considered an act of aggression under galactic law. You will comply with escort procedures immediately or face the consequences. Jake felt the familiar tension that came before combat. These aliens were clearly used to having their demands obeyed without question. They had surrounded his ship and were now issuing ultimatums. From a human perspective, this looked very much like a hostile takeover attempt. Ryan, what's the status of our defensive systems? Jake asked quietly. All weapon systems are online and ready, sir. Our armor plating is holding steady and all backup systems are functional. If they try to disable us with those energy weapons, we should be able to maintain basic operations. Kate looked up from her engineering station. Captain, I've been analyzing their energy signatures. Their weapons appear designed to overload and disable electronic systems. But our ship was built to military specifications with electromagnetic pulse hardening and mechanical backup systems. Their disabling weapons might not be as effective against us as they expect. Jake made his decision. The Liberty was designed to survive and fight in hostile environments. If these aliens wanted to test human resolve, they would discover that humanity had been preparing for this kind of confrontation for centuries. Pete, send a message to Commander Velnash. Tell him that we appreciate the escort offer, but we decline. We're here for peaceful contact, but we won't be forced into compliance through threats. The alien response was immediate. Commander Velnash fired a quantum pulse directly at the Liberty's main systems. The energy beam was designed to disable the ship's electronics and leave it helpless. In 3,000 years of galactic peace, no species had ever resisted this non-lethal weapon. The quantum pulse struck the Liberty's hull and spread across its surface like lightning. For a moment, the ship's lights flickered and several non-essential systems went offline, but the main power grid remained stable and the ship continued on its course as if nothing had happened. On his command ship, Velnash stared at his readings in complete shock. The quantum disruptor had made direct contact with the human vessel, but the ship was still fully operational. The humans had somehow built a vessel that could resist the most advanced disabling technology in the galaxy. Jake felt the ship shudder, slightly as the alien weapon struck, but Kate's voice came through the communication system calm and steady. Minor power fluctuation in secondary systems, Captain. All primary systems remain online. Whatever they hit us with, our hardening held. The moment of truth had arrived. The aliens had fired the first shot, and humanity had proven that their primitive-looking technology was more resilient than it appeared. Jake opened the communication channel one more time. Commander Vel Nash, your warning shot has been acknowledged. However, any further aggressive action will be met with defensive measures. We're still hoping for peaceful contact, but we won't be bullied into submission. In the council chamber, Ambassador Zexhai watched the tactical display with growing horror. The humans had just survived a quantum disruptor attack and were showing no signs of backing down. For the first time in galactic history, the Council's advanced technology had failed to end a confrontation before it could escalate into actual combat. Commander Velnash stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The human ship should have been completely disabled by now, its crew helpless and ready for peaceful capture. Instead, the Liberty continued moving through space as if his quantum disruptor had been nothing more than a gentle breeze. This was impossible according to every military manual in the galactic database. "Sir, the human vessel is powering up its weapon systems," reported his tactical officer with barely controlled panic in her voice. "I'm reading massive kinetic energy signatures from multiple points along their hull." Velnash had studied ancient military history as part of his officer training. He knew that primitive species sometimes used solid projectiles as weapons before they developed more civilized energy-based systems. But no spacefaring civilization had used kinetic weapons for thousands of years. They were crude, inaccurate, and completely ineffective against modern defensive technology. On the Liberty, Weapons Officer Ryan Bell completed his targeting sequence with the calm precision of a human military professional. The alien ships were beautiful examples of advanced engineering, but they were also completely unprepared for the type of warfare that humanity had perfected over centuries of conflict. "Captain, I have firing solutions on all 3 alien vessels," Ryan reported. "Their ships appear to have some kind of energy shielding, but I'm not detecting any physical armor or defensive barriers." Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical situation with the methodical approach that had kept him alive through 15 years of dangerous missions. The aliens had fired first, but their weapon had been designed to disable rather than destroy. Now, they were probably expecting him to surrender or retreat in the face of their superior technology. "Target their weapon systems only," Jake ordered. "We're not here to start a war, but we need to show them that threatening humans has consequences." The Liberty's railgun system came online with a low vibration that every crew member could feel through the deck plating. The magnetic accelerators charged to full power and loaded tungsten slugs into the firing chambers. Each projectile was a simple piece of metal, but when accelerated to 10% of light speed, it carried more kinetic energy than most alien weapons could generate. Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan monitored the power distribution from her station in engineering. "All systems green, Captain. Railguns charged and ready to fire." Jake took one last look at the alien ships surrounding his vessel. They were positioned in a classic containment formation that would be perfect for energy weapons or disabling beams. Unfortunately for them, it also made them easy targets for kinetic projectiles traveling at relativistic speeds. "Ryan, fire when ready." The Liberty's first railgun discharged with a barely audible whisper. The tungsten slug left the barrel at tremendous velocity and crossed the distance to the lead alien ship in less than 2 seconds. The projectile struck the vessel's weapon array with devastating effect, tearing through the energy projectors like they were made of paper. Commander Velnash felt his ship shudder as something impossibly fast punched through his primary disruptor, array. Damage reports flooded his command center as his crew tried to understand what had just happened. The human weapon had been completely silent and nearly invisible until it struck his ship. "Damage report," Velnash demanded. "Sir, our main quantum disruptor is completely destroyed. Whatever hit us went straight through our plasma shields like they weren't even there." The projectile appears to have been a simple piece of metal traveling at relativistic speed. Velnash felt a cold shock of recognition. The humans were using kinetic weapons, but not the crude artillery that ancient civilizations had employed. These projectiles were moving fast enough to punch through any known defensive system in the galaxy. The plasma shields that protected against energy weapons were useless against solid matter traveling at such extreme velocities. The second alien ship tried to maneuver away from the Liberty, but Ryan had already calculated its escape vector. The second railgun slug caught the vessel amidships, destroying its engine assembly and leaving it drifting helplessly in space. The third ship began broadcasting surrender signals before Jake could order another shot. On the council station, Ambassador Zexhai watched the tactical display with complete horror. 3 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy had been disabled in less than 30 seconds by weapons that belonged in a historical museum. The humans had demonstrated a level of military effectiveness that no civilization had achieved in 3,000 years. High Arbitrator Kelthas activated the emergency communication system and sent a priority message to every member world in the Council. All fleets are to maintain maximum distance from the human vessel. Do not engage under any circumstances until we understand their full capabilities. Jake opened a communication channel to the disabled alien ships. Commander Velnash, your vessels have been disabled but not destroyed. We could have aimed for your command sections or life support systems, but we chose not to. This demonstrates our peaceful intentions despite your aggressive actions. The response from Velnash came, back shaky and uncertain. Captain Morrison, our defensive systems were completely ineffective against your weapons. How is this possible? Our shields can deflect any known energy attack in the galaxy. Commander, your shields are designed to stop energy weapons and exotic particles. They were never intended to stop solid matter traveling at high velocity. Our weapons are simple pieces of metal accelerated by magnetic fields, but they carry enormous kinetic energy. On his damaged command ship, Velnash began to understand the terrible mistake the Council had made. The humans hadn't abandoned kinetic weapons because they were primitive. They had perfected them to a degree that made energy-based defenses completely obsolete. While galactic civilization had focused on elegant solutions to elegant problems, humanity had focused on brute force applied with devastating precision. Cultural analyst Helen Barnes reviewed the tactical data from the engagement with growing amazement. Captain, I think we need to reconsider our assumptions about galactic military doctrine. These aliens have clearly been at peace for so long that they've forgotten how to fight actual wars. Jake nodded grimly. They've built their entire defensive strategy around the assumption that everyone else thinks the same way they do. They never considered that a species might approach warfare from a completely different direction. Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan joined the conversation from engineering. Sir, I've been analyzing their ship designs based on our sensor readings. Everything is optimized for efficiency and elegance. There's no redundancy, no damage control systems, and no consideration for battlefield repair. One solid hit, and their ships are completely disabled. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council had maintained peace for 3,000 years, not through superior wisdom or advanced diplomacy, but through technological dominance that no longer applied. They had never encountered a species that could match their technology, while approaching warfare from fundamentally different principles. Jake made his decision. Pete, send a message to the Council station. Tell them that we're willing to continue diplomatic contact, but any further hostile actions will be met with appropriate responses. We came here in peace, but we're prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. The message reached the council chamber within minutes, and the response was immediate. High Arbitrator Kelthus himself appeared on the Liberty's main screen, his alien features showing clear signs of stress and confusion. Captain Morrison, the Galactic Council formally requests a ceasefire and immediate diplomatic negotiations. We appear to have seriously underestimated both your technological capabilities and your species' approach to conflict resolution. Jake smiled grimly at the alien leader's diplomatic language. High Arbitrator, we accept your request for negotiations. However, we'll be conducting these talks from a position of mutual respect rather than under threat of your superior technology. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted dramatically, and everyone involved was beginning to understand that first contact with humanity was going to change everything. Ambassador HFY stepped carefully through the airlock connecting the Council shuttle to the human vessel Liberty. The moment his feet touched the deck plating, he noticed the difference. The alien ship hummed with barely contained energy, and every surface looked designed for function rather than beauty. Thick metal plating covered the walls, and heavy blast doors separated each section of the corridor. Captain Jake Morrison waited in the docking bay with a small honor guard. The humans looked exactly like the pictures in their cultural database, but seeing them in person was different. They moved with the controlled alertness of professional warriors, their eyes constantly scanning for potential threats even during a peaceful diplomatic meeting. "Welcome aboard the Liberty, Ambassador," Jake said with a slight bow that HFY recognized as a human gesture of respect. "I hope this visit will help our species understand each other better." As they walked through the ship's corridors, HFY noticed details that troubled him deeply. Every doorway had blast shutters that could seal individual sections in case of hull breach. Emergency equipment was mounted at regular intervals, including breathing apparatus and medical supplies designed for combat injuries. This was not the ship of a peaceful exploration vessel. High Arbitrator Kelthus followed behind with two other council members, his four eyes taking in every detail of human technology. The ship's construction philosophy was completely alien to galactic standards. Instead of elegant efficiency, everything was built with multiple backup systems and the assumption that damage was inevitable. "Captain Morrison, your vessel appears to be heavily fortified for a diplomatic mission," Kelthus observed as they passed a section where crew members were conducting what looked like damage control drills. Jake stopped and turned to face the alien delegation. "High Arbitrator, the Liberty is actually one of our exploration vessels. We don't have ships specifically designed for diplomacy because we've never encountered other intelligent species before. Every human ship is built to survive in hostile environments." The aliens exchanged worried glances. If this heavily armed and armored vessel was considered an exploration ship, what did actual human warships look like? The implications were disturbing to species that had not built military vessels for thousands of years. They entered the ship's medical bay, where Dr. Amy Clark was reviewing her equipment inventory. The alien visitors stopped in shock when they saw the medical facility. Advanced surgical equipment shared space with battlefield trauma units designed to treat massive injuries. Drug dispensers contained both peaceful medications and combat stimulants for emergency situations. "Dr. Clark, could you explain your medical capabilities to our guests?" Jake requested. Amy looked up from her work and smiled at the alien delegation. "Certainly, Captain. Our medical bay is equipped to handle everything from routine health maintenance to emergency battlefield surgery. We can treat radiation poisoning, traumatic amputations, severe burns, and complex internal injuries." Ambassador HFY felt his stomach turn at the casual mention of such horrible injuries. "Doctor, why would an exploration vessel need to treat battlefield wounds?" Do you expect to encounter combat situations during peaceful missions? Ambassador, human exploration has always been dangerous work, Amy replied matter-of-factly. Our ships visit unknown planets with hostile environments, aggressive wildlife, and unpredictable weather. We also have to consider the possibility of equipment failure, accidents, or hostile contact with unknown species. Medical equipment that can save lives in combat can also save lives during exploration accidents. The tour continued to the engineering section, where Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan was running diagnostics on the ship's power systems. The alien visitors were amazed by the complexity of the backup systems and redundant controls that filled every available space. Kate, could you show our guests how human engineering differs from galactic standards? Jake asked. Kate wiped her hands on a maintenance cloth and gestured to the massive machinery around them. Sure thing, Captain. Every system on this ship has at least 3 backup methods. If our main computer fails, we have mechanical backup controls. If our primary power source is damaged, we have secondary fusion reactors. If those fail, we have battery systems and manual operations. High Arbitrator Kelthus studied the engineering systems with growing amazement. Engineer Sullivan, this level of redundancy must be extremely inefficient. Why not simply build more reliable primary systems? Because reliable systems fail when you need them most, Kate replied with a grin. Human engineering assumes that everything will break, usually at the worst possible moment. We design our ships to keep fighting even after they've taken massive damage. The delegation moved to the ship's weapons control room, where Ryan Bell was conducting routine maintenance on the railgun targeting systems. The aliens stared in fascination at weapons that looked like ancient relics, but had proven devastatingly effective against modern defensive technology. Officer Bell, could you explain how your kinetic weapons function? Kelthus asked carefully. Ryan looked up from his work and shrugged. It's pretty simple, really. We use magnetic fields to accelerate metal slugs to very high speeds. The faster they go, the more energy they carry when they hit the target. Our computers calculate trajectory, target movement, and environmental factors to ensure accuracy. But why use such primitive projectiles when energy weapons are more precise and efficient? Ambassador Zexhai asked. Because energy weapons can be blocked by shields, deflected by magnetic fields, or absorbed by specialized armor, Ryan explained patiently. A chunk of metal moving at 10% of light speed doesn't care about your defensive technology. Physics is physics, and kinetic energy always wins. The final stop on the tour was the ship's command center, where navigator Lisa Parker was reviewing stellar charts with cultural analyst Helen Barnes. The aliens were surprised to see that human navigation systems included detailed tactical analysis and threat assessment protocols for every star system. Helen, could you share some information about human space exploration with our guests? Jake requested. Helen activated the main display screen and showed a map of human space. Certainly, Captain. Humans have been exploring space for about 200 years, but we've only achieved interstellar travel in the last 50. Every mission beyond our solar system is considered a potential first contact situation. You mean you expect to encounter hostile aliens during exploration missions? Kelthas asked with surprise. We hope to encounter friendly aliens, Helen corrected, but we prepare for hostile ones. Human history has taught us that making contact with unknown civilizations can be very dangerous. We've learned to approach such situations with caution and overwhelming force. The tour concluded in the ship's conference room, where Jake offered the alien delegation seats around a table that looked more like a military briefing facility than a diplomatic meeting room. Maps, tactical displays, and communication equipment covered the walls. "Captain Morrison, we must ask you directly." High Arbitrator Kelthus began carefully. "Is your entire species as militaristic as this vessel suggests? Are humans naturally aggressive or warlike?" Jake considered the question seriously before responding. "High Arbitrator, humans are not naturally warlike, but we are naturally cautious. Our planet has seen countless conflicts throughout our history, and we've learned that peace is only possible when it's backed by strength. We don't seek war, but we prepare for it constantly." Ambassador Zex-High leaned forward in his chair. "But surely your species has moved beyond such primitive thinking now that you've achieved interstellar travel." "Ambassador, we achieved interstellar travel precisely because we never abandoned that thinking," Jake replied. "Every human ship is built like a warship because space is dangerous, and we don't know what we might encounter out here. Today's first contact proves that our caution was justified." The alien delegation sat in stunned silence as they began to understand the fundamental difference between their civilizations. The Galactic Council had achieved peace through enlightenment and cooperation. Humans had achieved survival through constant preparation for conflict. Now, these two very different philosophies had met among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. News of the human encounter spread through galactic communication networks faster than the speed of light itself. On the industrial world of Kepler-7, Merchant Captain Thexroll read the initial reports while loading cargo for his next trading run. The details seemed impossible to believe. A single primitive vessel had disabled 3 Council warships using weapons that belonged in ancient history museums. The first political shockwaves began almost immediately. On the war-torn border world of Sigma Draconis, Kreth Syndicate General Vaktos studied the tactical data with growing excitement. For generations, his people had been held in check by the threat of Council intervention. Their energy weapons and plasma shields had made resistance seem hopeless. But if these humans could defeat Council ships with simple kinetic weapons, perhaps the situation was not as hopeless as it appeared. "Gather the War Council," Vaktos ordered his aide. "If the Council's ships can be destroyed by primitive projectiles, then we need to reconsider our military strategy immediately." On the Council station, High Arbitrator Keltas stood before the full assembly of galactic representatives and tried to explain what had happened during the human encounter. The chamber filled with worried voices as the implications became clear to everyone present. "The humans possess military technology that renders our defensive systems obsolete," Kelthus announced to the stunned assembly. "Their approach to warfare is fundamentally different from anything we have encountered in 3,000 years of galactic civilization." Ambassador Zex-High rose from his seat to address the assembly. "I have personally toured the human vessel, and I can confirm that their entire civilization is built around the assumption of constant conflict. Every system has multiple backups, every crew member is trained for combat situations, and every piece of equipment is designed to function even under massive damage." The representatives began arguing among themselves as the true scope of the problem became apparent. The galactic peace had been maintained through technological superiority that no longer existed. If one species could build weapons that defeated Council defenses, then other species could certainly do the same. Meanwhile, on the Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison found himself dealing with responsibilities he had never expected. Communications Officer Pete Young handed him message after message from Earth, requesting detailed reports about the alien encounter. Every government and military organization on the planet wanted to know exactly what humanity had discovered among the stars. "Sir, we're receiving priority communications from Earth Command," Pete reported. "Admiral Grace Foster is requesting immediate tactical assessment of alien military capabilities." Jake took the message and read it carefully. Admiral Foster commanded the Sol Defense Fleet, and her ships represented the most advanced military technology that humanity had ever built. If she was asking for tactical assessments, it meant Earth was preparing for the possibility of larger-scale contact with alien civilizations. Cultural analyst Helen Barnes joined Jake in the briefing room with her preliminary analysis of galactic society. The information was both encouraging and deeply troubling. The aliens had achieved remarkable technological advancement and maintained peace for thousands of years. But they had also become completely unprepared for species that approached conflict from different philosophical directions. "Captain, I think we need to understand that we've just changed the balance of power in this entire region of the galaxy," Helen explained. "These aliens have been living in a peaceful bubble for so long that they've forgotten how to deal with actual military threats." Jake nodded grimly. "And now other species are going to realize that the Council's technology isn't as invincible as everyone thought." Back on Sigma Draconis, General Vaktos convened his war council in the underground bunkers that had protected Kreth leadership for decades. The assembled military commanders studied the human tactical data with the hungry eyes of warriors who had found a weakness in their enemy's armor. The council ships were disabled by simple kinetic projectiles traveling at high velocity, Vaktos announced to his officers. "Their energy shields are useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds." Colonel Bexnar, his chief weapons specialist, leaned forward with interest. "General, our industrial capacity could produce such weapons within months. If we could build magnetic accelerators similar to human designs, we could challenge Council authority directly." "Begin immediate research and development," Vaktos ordered. "Contact our spies in Council space and gather every piece of information available about human military technology. The age of Council dominance may finally be ending." The ripple effects continued to spread throughout galactic civilization. On the peaceful world of Aurora Prime, President Melinda called an emergency session of her planetary council. Her species had enjoyed 3 centuries of prosperity under Council protection, but that protection now seemed much less reliable than before. If the humans can defeat Council ships, then other aggressive species will certainly develop similar capabilities, she warned her advisors. "We need to begin preparing defensive measures for our world immediately." On the Liberty, Jake received an encrypted message from Earth that changed everything. Admiral Foster was coming to the alien contact zone with a small fleet of human vessels. The message was brief but clear. Humanity was preparing to take its place among the galactic community, and they would do so from a position of strength. "Pete, prepare a secure communication to the Council station," Jake ordered. "I need to inform them that additional human vessels will be arriving soon." The response from High Arbitrator Kelthas came back within hours, and the tone was very different from their earlier communications. The aliens were clearly nervous about the prospect of more human ships entering their space, especially after seeing what just one vessel could accomplish. "Captain Morrison, the Galactic Council formally requests advance notice of your fleet's capabilities and intentions. We wish to ensure that no misunderstandings occur during their arrival." Jake smiled grimly as he read the message. The aliens were trying to gather intelligence about human military strength, just as any competent government would do when faced with an unknown threat. Unfortunately for them, they were about to discover that the Liberty was barely a representative sample of human naval capability. Admiral Foster's flagship, the UNS Defiance, was 3 times the size of the Liberty and carried weapons that made the exploration vessel's railguns look like toys. The accompanying vessels included heavy cruisers designed for extended combat operations and a support ship carrying enough firepower to level a small moon. Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan reviewed the technical specifications for the incoming fleet with growing satisfaction. "Captain, when the Admiral arrives with those ships, the aliens are going to understand that we weren't kidding about being prepared for hostile contact." Jake nodded and activated the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. Additional human vessels will be arriving soon to support our diplomatic mission. Remember that we are representing our entire species to these aliens. Maintain professional conduct and be prepared for any situation." In the depths of space, Admiral Foster's fleet moved toward the Council station at maximum speed. The Admiral herself stood on the bridge of the Defiance and reviewed the tactical reports from Captain Morrison's encounter. The aliens had superior technology in many areas, but they had built their entire civilization around assumptions that no longer applied. "Communications, prepare a message for the Galactic Council," Admiral Foster ordered. "Inform them that the United Nations Space Command fleet is approaching their station for diplomatic purposes. We come in peace, but we are prepared to defend ourselves and our interests if necessary." The message would reach the alien station hours before the human fleet arrived, giving the Council time to prepare for a demonstration of human military capability that would reshape galactic politics forever. The age of peaceful exploration was ending, and the age of human expansion among the stars was about to begin. Admiral Grace Foster stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance as her fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Council territory. The massive warship dwarfed Captain Morrison's exploration vessel, its hull bristling with weapons systems that represented the absolute pinnacle of human military technology. Behind her came 3 heavy cruisers and a support vessel that carried enough firepower to reduce planets to rubble. The alien reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Every sensor array in the system focused on the human fleet, and emergency alerts flooded the Council communication networks. High Arbitrator Kelthus stood in the main operations center and watched the tactical display with growing horror as the computer analyzed the new arrivals. "The largest vessel is over 2 kilometers long and massing approximately 50 million tons, reported the sensor operator in a voice barely above a whisper. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from multiple weapon systems, including what appears to be kinetic accelerators far larger than anything on the first human ship." Ambassador HFY felt his knees weaken as he studied the data. The exploration, Vessel Liberty, had seemed primitive but dangerous. These new ships looked like instruments of planetary destruction, built by a species that had perfected the art of warfare across multiple star systems. Admiral Foster activated the fleet communication system and addressed the alien station directly. Her voice carried the calm authority of an officer who had spent 30 years commanding the most powerful warships in human space. "Galactic Council Station. This is Admiral Grace Foster of the United Nations Space Command. We are here to support diplomatic negotiations between our species and to ensure the safety of our personnel. We request permission to establish a defensive perimeter around our vessels." The request was polite, but delivered in a tone that made it clear this was not actually a request. The human fleet began moving into formation without waiting for a response, their ships taking positions that would allow them to control access to the entire system. On the Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison watched the arrival of the human fleet with mixed feelings. Admiral Foster's ships represented the protection and backup that every exploration captain dreamed of having, but they also represented the end of his role as humanity's sole representative to galactic civilization. "Sir, Admiral Foster is requesting permission to come aboard," Communications Officer Pete Young reported. "She wants to receive a full briefing on our contact with the aliens before beginning formal negotiations." Jake nodded and began preparing for the transfer of authority that would elevate this situation far beyond his rank and experience. "Tell the Admiral she's welcome aboard. Have the honor guard standing by in the docking bay." Admiral Foster's shuttle docked with the Liberty an hour later, and Jake met her at the airlock with full military honors. The Admiral was a compact woman in her 50s whose calm demeanor concealed decades of experience with the most dangerous missions in human space. "Captain Morrison, you've done excellent work here," Foster said as they walked toward the briefing room. "Your tactical reports indicate that these aliens have advanced technology but completely obsolete military doctrine." "Yes, ma'am. They've been at peace for so long that they've forgotten how to fight actual wars. Their entire defense strategy assumes that potential enemies will use the same type of weapons they do." In the briefing room, Jake presented his complete analysis of alien technology and military capabilities. Admiral Foster listened carefully as he explained the political structure of the Galactic Council and the implications of humanity's unexpected military superiority. "Admiral, I believe we're looking at a civilization that achieved peace through technological dominance," Jake concluded. "They've maintained order by being more advanced than anyone else, but now they've met a species that approaches warfare from completely different principles." Foster studied the tactical data with the analytical mind of a professional strategist. "Captain, based on your analysis, how do you think other species in this galaxy will react to our presence?" "Ma'am, I think we're about to see the collapse of a political system that's been stable for thousands of years. Once other species realize that council ships can be defeated, we'll probably see conflicts breaking out across multiple star systems." The Admiral's assessment was interrupted by an urgent communication from the fleet. Commander Sarah Blake, captain of the heavy cruiser Washington, reported that long-range sensors were detecting unusual military activity in several nearby systems. "Admiral, we're picking up energy signatures consistent with weapons testing in the Sigma Draconis system. It looks like someone is experimenting with high-velocity projectile weapons." Foster exchanged glances with Jake. "It's starting already. Someone out there is trying to reverse engineer our railgun technology based on the tactical data from your engagement." Meanwhile, in the council chamber, High Arbitrator Kelthus faced the most serious crisis in galactic history. Reports were flooding in from across council space about species that had suddenly begun developing kinetic weapons programs. The revelation of human military capabilities had shattered the technological balance that had maintained peace for millennia. "We're receiving reports of weapons development programs in 17 different systems," reported his chief intelligence officer. "The Kreth Syndicate has gone into full military production mode, and even some of our allied species are beginning defensive preparations." Ambassador Zex High joined the emergency session with additional disturbing news. "High Arbitrator, our diplomatic corps is reporting that several species are requesting immediate military assistance from the Council. They're afraid that the changing balance of power will lead to renewed conflicts." The irony was bitter and obvious. The arrival of humans who claimed to come in peace had destabilized the most successful peaceful civilization in galactic history. By demonstrating that Council military superiority was an illusion, Humanity had triggered a potential arms race that could lead to wars not seen for thousands of years. Admiral Foster received the intelligence reports from her fleet and made the decision that would define humanity's role in galactic civilization. She activated the fleet communication system and broadcast a message to every government in Council space. This is Admiral Foster of the United Nations Space Command. We are aware that our presence has created concerns about the balance of power in this region. Let me be absolutely clear about human intentions. We did not come here to conquer or to destabilize your civilization. We came seeking peaceful contact and mutual cooperation. The message continued with carefully chosen words that carried unmistakable implications. However, we will not tolerate aggression against human interests or our allies. Any species that chooses the path of warfare will discover that humanity has spent centuries perfecting the art of conflict. We strongly encourage all civilizations to choose the path of peace and cooperation. On the Kreth military world of Sigma Draconis, General Vaktos read the human message with a mixture of anger and calculation. The humans were clearly trying to replace the Council as the dominant military power in the galaxy. But they had also demonstrated that their weapons technology was generations ahead of anything his species could develop quickly. General, our weapons research teams estimate that it will take at least 5 years to develop kinetic weapons comparable to human technology, his science advisor reported. The magnetic acceleration systems require precision manufacturing that we don't currently possess. Vaktos considered his options carefully. The humans had made it clear that they were prepared to fight anyone who challenged them. His species could either submit to this new reality or face the same fate as the Council ships that had been disabled so easily. Back on the Council station, High Arbitrator Kelthus made the decision that would change the course of galactic history. He activated the emergency communication system and sent a message to Admiral Foster requesting immediate negotiations. Admiral, the Galactic Council formally requests urgent diplomatic discussions regarding the establishment of a new balance of power in our region of space. We are prepared to offer humanity full membership in our alliance and equal participation in galactic governance. Admiral Foster read the message with satisfaction. The aliens had realized that they couldn't fight humanity and had chosen the wiser path of cooperation. The age of human expansion among the stars had officially begun, and it would be built on a foundation of mutual respect backed by overwhelming military superiority. The galaxy would never be the same, and everyone involved was beginning to understand that humanity's arrival among the stars marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like the gathering that took place 3 days after Admiral Foster's fleet arrived. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive chamber, their alien faces showing mixtures of curiosity, fear, and calculation as they waited for humanity's first official address to galactic civilization. Admiral Foster stood at the central podium where High Arbitrator Kelthus usually conducted council business. The human admiral looked small compared to some of the massive alien delegates, but everyone in the chamber understood that she represented the most dangerous military force they had ever encountered. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the observation section with his senior officers, watching as his species took its place among the stars in a way that no one had ever imagined. The peaceful first contact that Earth had dreamed about for centuries had become something far more complex and potentially dangerous. "Honored delegates of the Galactic Council," Admiral Foster began, her voice carrying clearly through the chambers. "Translation systems. I stand before you today not as a conqueror, but as a representative of humanity seeking our place among the civilized species of the galaxy. The alien delegates listened carefully as Foster outlined humanity's position. With the diplomatic skill of someone who had spent years negotiating treaties between hostile human factions, we are aware that our arrival has created concerns about the balance of power that has maintained peace in this region for thousands of years. I want to address those concerns directly and honestly. Ambassador Zex-High leaned forward in his seat, studying the human admiral's expression for any sign of the aggressive intentions that so many species feared. What he saw instead was the calm confidence of someone who held overwhelming power but was choosing to use it responsibly. Humanity has spent its entire history preparing for conflict, because our world taught us that peace is fragile and must be protected. We developed our military technology not from aggression, but from the understanding that those who cannot defend themselves will eventually be destroyed by those who can. The chamber stirred with quiet murmurs as the translation systems converted Foster's words into hundreds of different languages. The concept she described was alien to most galactic species, who had achieved peace through cooperation rather than deterrence. We did not come here to impose our will on your civilizations or to replace your political structures. We came seeking trade, knowledge, and friendship. However, we will not be threatened, intimidated, or attacked by anyone, regardless of their technological capabilities or political authority. High Arbitrator Kelthus rose from his seat to address the human admiral directly. Admiral Foster, your species' military capabilities have certainly impressed the Council, but we must ask, what guarantees can you offer that humanity will use its power responsibly? Foster smiled slightly at the question. High Arbitrator, I can offer you the same guarantee that has maintained peace between human nations for over a century: mutual assured destruction. Any species that attacks humanity or our allies will discover that we are capable of defending ourselves with devastating effectiveness. The blunt statement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Most galactic civilizations had abandoned such direct approaches to international relations thousands of years ago. But the human admiral was laying out the rules of engagement with unmistakable clarity. However, Foster continued, we also offer the promise of protection to any species that chooses cooperation over conflict. Humanity is prepared to defend our friends and allies with the same determination that we would defend ourselves. In the Kreth delegation section, General Vaktos listened to the human proposals with growing frustration. His species had planned to use the disruption caused by humanity's arrival to launch their own expansion campaigns. But the humans were making it clear that they would not tolerate aggressive behavior from anyone. The human position is unacceptable, Vaktos whispered to his aide. They want to replace the Council as the dominant power while pretending to offer protection to everyone else. Admiral Foster seemed to sense the tension in the chamber and addressed it directly. I know that some of you view humanity as a threat to the established order. You're correct. We are a threat to any system that relies on the threat of force to maintain control. But we offer something better, a partnership based on mutual respect and shared benefits. The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed star charts of human space and the surrounding regions. Humanity controls 17 star systems with a combined population of 12 billion people. We have industrial capacity that exceeds most galactic civilizations, and we are prepared to share our technology and resources with species that choose to work with us. The economic implications were staggering. Human industrial capacity, combined with galactic knowledge and technology, could transform entire regions of space, but it would also create dependencies that could be used to enforce human political objectives. Ambassador HFY requested permission to speak. Admiral, your offers are generous, but many species are concerned about becoming dependent on human protection and resources. How can we be certain that you won't use this dependency to control our governments? Ambassador, we have no interest in controlling your governments, Foster replied. Human history has taught us that conquered peoples make poor allies and unreliable trading partners. We prefer voluntary cooperation based on mutual benefit. The Admiral paused and let her words sink in before continuing. But let me be completely clear about one thing. We will not tolerate aggression against ourselves or our allies. Any species that chooses warfare will discover that humanity has spent centuries perfecting the art of conflict. To emphasize her point, Foster activated another holographic display showing the specifications of human military technology. The chamber fell silent as delegates studied weapon systems that made their most advanced technology look primitive by comparison. These are the defensive capabilities that we bring to any alliance, Foster explained calmly. Our ships are designed to survive and fight in environments that would destroy most galactic vessels. Our weapons can penetrate any known defensive system. Our crews are trained for extended combat operations in hostile territory. The message was clear without being explicitly threatening. Humanity was offering partnership and protection, but the alternative was facing the most effective military force in galactic history. General Vaktos made his decision. The Kreth Syndicate formally requests membership in the Human Alliance, he announced, stunning his own delegation. We believe that cooperation will serve our people better than conflict. One by one, other species began announcing their intention to join the human-led alliance. Some were motivated by the promise of protection and economic benefits. Others were motivated by fear of what would happen if they remained outside the new power structure. High Arbitrator Kelthus watched his 3,000-year-old political system transform before his eyes. The Galactic Council would continue to exist, but real power had shifted to the humans and their rapidly growing alliance. The Council accepts the new reality, he announced formally. We propose the establishment of a joint Human Council Commission to oversee the transition to the new balance of power. Admiral Foster nodded with satisfaction. The United Nations Space Command accepts this proposal. We look forward to working with all civilized species to maintain peace and prosperity throughout this region of the galaxy. As the assembly session ended, Captain Jake Morrison realized that he had witnessed the birth of a new galactic order. Humanity had achieved in days what most species took centuries to accomplish: recognition as a major power backed by the military strength to enforce their will. The age of human expansion among the stars had officially begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Terran Embassy Station, watching as ships from dozens of different species arrived for the first Galactic Trade Summit under human leadership. The station itself was a marvel of combined human and alien engineering, built in record time through cooperation between species that had barely known each other existed. The human-led alliance now included over 100 species, ranging from the powerful Vorthan Empire to small independent worlds that had never before had any voice in galactic politics. The old Galactic Council still existed, but it had become a junior partner in the new political structure that humanity had created through a combination of military strength and diplomatic skill. Admiral Foster had returned to Earth 6 weeks ago to brief the United Nations Security Council on the establishment of humanity's galactic empire. In her place, she had left behind a permanent task force under Admiral Robert Chen, whose job was to maintain the peace that human military superiority had made possible. The economic changes had been even more dramatic than the political ones. Human manufacturing technology, combined with alien knowledge and resources, had created an industrial boom that was transforming entire star systems. The Liberty, Jake's exploration vessel, now served as a transport for trade delegations and cultural exchange programs. Communications Officer Pete Young joined Jake on the observation deck with the latest reports from Earth. "Captain, the United Nations has approved the establishment of 12 new colony worlds in this sector. The first colonist ships should arrive within the year." Jake read through the reports with mixed feelings. Humanity was expanding into space, faster than anyone had thought possible, but the rapid growth was also creating new challenges and responsibilities. Every human colony would need protection, and every new settlement would change the balance of power in local star systems. Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan approached with her usual coffee cup and engineering reports. "Sir, I thought you'd want to know that the Kreth Syndicate has requested technical assistance with upgrading their industrial infrastructure. They want to build manufacturing facilities using human automation technology." The request was typical of the changes sweeping through the galaxy. Species that had once been enemies of the old council were now eager partners in the human alliance, hoping to benefit from the economic opportunities that cooperation provided. Cultural analyst Helen Barnes arrived with more complex news. "Captain, we're receiving reports of some resistance to human influence in the outer systems. A few species are forming what they call a traditional council to oppose human expansion." Jake nodded grimly. Not everyone in the galaxy was happy with the new order that humanity had created. Some species missed the old system where technological advancement rather than military strength determined political power. Others worried that human culture was too aggressive and would eventually dominate galactic civilization. "Any indication that this traditional council represents a serious threat?" Jake asked. "Not militarily," Helen replied. "But they're gaining support among species that feel overwhelmed by the pace of change. They're calling for a return to the old council system and the gradual reduction of human influence." The conversation was interrupted by an emergency communication from Admiral Chen's flagship. The Admiral's face appeared on the wall display with the serious expression that Jake had learned to associate with major problems. "Captain Morrison, we have a situation developing in the Tau Ceti system. The Traditional Council has declared the system a human-free zone and is threatening to attack any ships flying under our flag." Jake felt the familiar tension that came before conflict. "Admiral, what's the tactical situation?" "They have approximately 20 ships of various designs, mostly older Council technology with some improvised kinetic weapons. Nothing that poses a serious threat to our forces, but they seem determined to make a stand." The political implications were more serious than the military ones. If humanity crushed this resistance movement too quickly or too harshly, it would confirm the fears of species that worried about human aggression. But if they allowed the challenge to succeed, it would encourage other groups to test human resolve. Admiral Foster's voice came through the communication system from Earth. "Jake, I'm transmitting new orders from the Security Council. You're being promoted to Commodore and given command of the diplomatic mission to resolve this situation." Jake accepted the promotion with the same calm professionalism that had served him well during first contact. Understood, Admiral. What are my operational parameters? Use whatever force is necessary to maintain the integrity of the Alliance, but try to minimize casualties. We want to show the galaxy that humans can be both strong and merciful. 2 days later, Commodore Morrison arrived in the Tau Ceti system aboard the heavy cruiser Endeavour, accompanied by a small fleet of human and allied vessels. The traditional Council ships were arrayed in defensive formation around the system's main inhabited planet, their weapons powered and ready for combat. The leader of the resistance movement was Admiral Corvash, a member of the same species as High Arbitrator Kelthus. He had served in the old Council fleet for over 2 centuries and represented the old guard that refused to accept human leadership. Human vessels, you are not welcome in this system, Corvash broadcast on all frequencies. We call upon you to withdraw and allow the restoration of legitimate galactic authority. Jake activated the fleet communication system and responded with the diplomatic skills he had developed over months of dealing with alien politics. Admiral Corvash, I respect your concerns about the changes in galactic government. However, this system is under the protection of the Human Alliance, and we cannot allow it to be isolated from galactic trade and cooperation. We reject human protection and human authority, Corvash replied. Our species achieved civilization when yours was still primitive, and we will not be ruled by upstart barbarians. The insult was carefully chosen to provoke an angry response, but Jake had learned to control his emotions during diplomatic encounters. Admiral, I understand your frustration, but the reality is that the old system failed to maintain peace when it was challenged. The new system has proven more effective at protecting civilized species from aggression. The standoff continued for several hours, while Jake tried to negotiate a peaceful resolution. But Admiral Corvash was determined to force a confrontation that would demonstrate either human weakness or human brutality to the rest of the galaxy. Finally, Jake made the decision that would define his role as humanity's representative to galactic civilization. Admiral Corvash, I'm going to demonstrate why the old system failed and why the new system works. The Endeavour launched a single railgun slug at extremely low velocity, barely fast enough to penetrate the shields of Corvash's flagship. The projectile struck the ship's main weapon array and disabled it without causing casualties or significant structural damage. Admiral, your ship has been disabled by a weapon traveling at less than 1% of our maximum velocity, Jake announced calmly. If we had wanted to destroy your fleet, it would already be debris. Instead, we offer you the same choice we offer everyone: cooperation or isolation. The psychological effect was devastating. Corvash realized that the human commander had demonstrated complete superiority while showing remarkable restraint. The old Council would have either been unable to respond effectively or would have destroyed the Resistance fleet entirely. What terms do you offer for cooperation? Corvash asked after a long silence. Full membership in the Alliance with all the benefits that provides. Your species will retain complete autonomy over internal affairs while participating in mutual defense and trade agreements. You will have a voice in Alliance decisions proportional to your contribution to common goals. Admiral Corvash considered the offer carefully. The terms were more generous than anything the old Council had ever provided to smaller species. The traditional Council accepts your terms, Commodore Morrison. As news of the peaceful resolution spread through the galaxy, Jake realized that humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had created a political system based on voluntary cooperation backed by overwhelming force, but tempered by restraint and respect for local autonomy. The final message of the day came from Earth, where the United Nations had just approved. the galactic charter that would govern human expansion among the stars. The document established principles of cooperation, mutual defense, and respect for local cultures that would guide humanity's role as the dominant power in their region of the galaxy. Standing on the bridge of his ship, Commodore Jake Morrison looked out at the stars and understood that he had witnessed the birth of humanity's galactic empire. It was built not on conquest or domination, but on the simple principle that peace was only possible when good people had the strength to defend themselves and their allies from those who would choose warfare over cooperation. The galaxy had been left speechless by humanity's arrival, but it was learning to speak the new language of strength tempered by wisdom that humans brought to the stars.